That one, year number 4. It's a Yank on the Footy with Craig Wessels. Let's all sit back and enjoy a chat about the greatest game on the face of the earth. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 257 of A Yank on the Footy. I'm Craig Wessels, coming to you from Sandusky, Ohio. Beautiful blue sky here today. In this episode, I am going to be sitting down to chat with Tim Outhred, who I had on as a guest on my live episode last night. We did this interview about a week and a half ago, however. Now, my guest has a rather unique footy story. He didn't grow up in a footy family, but a relocation to Melbourne sparked a family interest in the game, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have him on board, and we'll be jumping into our conversation in just a moment. Now, don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, that if you want to get your local footy club getting a shout-out during an upcoming episode, drop me a note via email at my email at yankonthefooty@gmail.com. Reach out to me on Twitter at yank_on. You can reach out to me on Facebook, a Yank on the Footy podcast, or on Instagram, a Yank on the Footy, or you can find me on LinkedIn or Facebook, look for Craig Wessels, or you can head over to my website at yankonthefooty.com and you can leave a message there as well. And while you're there, I do hope you'll consider subscribing to the mailing list. And if you've been listening for a while and you want to take a couple of minutes, I would greatly appreciate it if you could leave a review for the podcast. It helps to give me some more street cred, if you will, with prospective listeners, because there are a few of us here in the United States that are that absolutely love your game and are doing a yeoman's work. And I actually was a yeoman when I was in the Navy, promoting the game here, but also trying to connect with other Australian supporters. So if you love what I'm doing and you could take a minute and leave a review, that'd be absolutely awesome. That would be a huge help. I would truly appreciate it. Now, today's club of the episode are the North Sunshine Roadrunners, and this was a club that was recommended to me by my guest. He has friends who were involved with this organization. The Roadrunners were founded back in 1967 as the Crossroads Football Club, and it's actually one of the newer clubs since they began in 67, and they began with under 9, 11, and 13 squads before growing to where they are today with their first senior side in 1979. Now, based upon their club's About Us section in the club history that I found online, they claim to be one of the most diverse clubs in the western suburbs of Melbourne. And based upon the information they provided there, I think they are probably right about that. They mentioned that they had done a survey of the athletes on one of their teams. And this, I guess, has been a couple of years ago, so it may have shifted a little bit. But the players identified with 15 different nationalities, which is just, it's really impressive. Now, this Saturday, the 29th of April, the Roadrunners are going to be facing off against the Suns. And the following Saturday, the 6th of May, the club is going to be hosting their first 80s iPod Shuffle Night at Dempster Park, with the doors opening up at 7:30. And if you want to get a song played, I think it's going to cost you $10 to do that. And they encourage you to wear your 80s attire, and the best dressed will win a prize. I do want to wish the Roadrunners the absolute best going into 2023. Now let's go ahead and jump into my chat with Dr. Tim Outhred. I really enjoyed this. We touched on some subjects that, one is kind of near and dear to me because it's kind of that fish out of water thing. And the other one, to be completely honest, was not something I was sure I was ever going to be addressing on the podcast, and I think we had a great discussion about this. So let's go ahead and jump on in. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my guest this episode has a unique footy story. He's somebody who did not grow up in a footy family, but a relocation helped to spark a family interest in his interest, and I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome Dr. Tim Outhred to the podcast. Sir, welcome and thanks for coming on this morning.
Thank you so much, Craig, for having me. Really appreciate it. Love the podcast. So I'm very honored to actually be on.
Thank you. Well, I truly appreciate that. You're talking to some guy sitting in a closet, so that's but I appreciate. And this is we had last week we had a rather lengthy conversation on Instagram that we got into a couple different topics that we're going to touch on today, and they're uniquely different from one another, but one kind of parallels some things that are happening in the game today, and this one's kind of maybe on the periphery of it, but the other one is simply the fact that you have a unique story that you didn't grow up a footy fan, but now you are a passionate supporter of your club, and we'll get into who that is in just a moment. And as you said, your club helps to keep the lights on, which we'll get into talking about here in a few minutes as well. But you took a rather circuitous route to becoming a footy fan. So can you share with us your origin story? How did you end up getting to become a footy fan, and who do you support? Give us the background here.
So, well, yeah, I was born in Sydney, which is not a footy town whatsoever. There are a couple of clubs, but the predominant sport that people watch and attend is the NRL, which is the National Rugby League. But I kind of didn't grow up supporting that, given that my father was more of like a North Shore schoolboy, which is, in terms of the demographic, a little bit more snooty in a way.
Okay.
Although he's not like that at all. But he didn't go to private school or anything. But the sport that we kind of followed and grew up with was rugby union, which is, on the face of it, quite similar, but quite a different sport. Rugby union is, played in more countries than rugby league. It's quite a broad European sport, whereas rugby league is predominantly English or Australian.
Okay. Now, would New Zealand fall into that category as well then?
Rugby league is still played in New Zealand, and they do have a team which is in the National Rugby League. So New Zealand have a team as part of the Australian League.
Okay.
But their predominant sport is rugby union.
Okay. So what is, can I ask, because I have no clue about this, what is the major difference between the gameplay or the rules between the two of them?
Well, it's quite funny. The rule book for rugby union is like a phone book size. So it's a very complicated game with lots of laws.
Okay.
So they don't call them rules, they call them laws. And the reason they do that probably is just because you have to have volumes of books and be quite a student of the laws in order to understand exactly what the calls are and what's going on, because it's very particular. Rugby league is, on the face of it, a much more simple game in terms of its rules, much easier to understand.
Okay.
And probably why it's more liked generally than rugby union.
Okay.
Because rugby union is hard to get into. You kind of have to, maybe it's people who grow up with it more who support it. But in New Zealand, that's their thing. They absolutely love it. They're the best at it, really. In many respects, and the Islander folk as well. They that's their predominant sport. But because I also have this French connection, my mother being French, they know about rugby union very much. So it was kind of like one of the things that we could all, as a family, understand together. Because she came from the south of France, where it's played and they have their own leagues and things like that. And we would watch the French team play when they play against Australia, and watch the Rugby World Cups when it comes every 4 years, which is, still one of my favorite sporting spectacles.
Okay, so,
but yeah.
How did you find yourself getting to Melbourne? Because you have a very interesting background that we're going to get into a little bit as well. But how did you find yourself going from Sydney to Melbourne?
So From Sydney, when I was about 11 years old, we moved to Wagga Wagga, which is still in New South Wales in the same state, where kind of footy was more widely played and watched, but still was kind of in the background in the mix of the rugby league and the cricket and the other bits and pieces that they like. Wagga Wagga is such a sports mad place. And then after that, we moved when I was a teenager and I did high school in Melbourne, where it was a large culture shock in a way, because everyone was footy mad. Like kids had their teams, and at school there would be like the footy day where everyone would bring their scarf in from home, and you would be able to tell where everyone's allegiances were on that day and that kind of thing, and kind of tease each other about it. And as a kid, coming into that. Yeah.
At that point, you didn't have any allegiances right at the outset, did you?
Well, I kind of had a default allegiance to the Western Bulldogs because we moved to the western suburbs, and it was just based on locality. Whereas my friends, they supported all different teams, some of whom were Western Bulldogs. But at the time, in that kind of early 2000s time, it was the Western Bulldogs was like the wooden spoon, the lower team. So it was kind of like, yeah, okay, Western Bulldogs, but not because they were doing super well or anything. And then, so I did my undergraduate degree in Melbourne, and after that, I took up an opportunity to move to Sydney on my own to do a PhD at the university there. And I kind of there rediscovered rugby league. So I'm a big South Sydney Rabbitohs fan as well, as is the Prime Minister of the day, Anthony Albanese.
There you go.
Yeah, and they have a similar story in a way to the Western Bulldogs, who is my AFL team. Now, and I'm a head over heels kind of diehard fan now of the Western Bulldogs, but equally so the South Sydney Rabbitohs, because they both had this underdog story with fight back and coming out at the brink of collapse and using members to redevelop the team, and then they both winning premierships eventually after that.
There you go.
So so it's quite a nice little story to be part of, even though it was much later in life and I wasn't part of families who were involved in fight back or supported teams before these issues started. So
do you feel as though you've been, because in a way your story is there's a small kernel of a connection to me becoming a footy fan so late in life. Yours came a lot sooner. Yeah. But have you ever felt like an outsider as a footy fan because you didn't grow up with it and have the be able to go back and see the the photo in the hospital where your first membership card is tucked into your nappy, that sort of thing? Have you felt like an outsider because of that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think so. Like to some extent, yeah, because after being in Sydney, I actually found people who were interested in the Western Bulldogs, who were from Melbourne. In my then, so after I did a PhD, I did a medical degree, and I found people from Melbourne who were diehard Bulldogs fans, and we went to games together in Sydney. So we would go together to the Greater Western Sydney games and watch the Bulldogs play them. Well, sometimes win, sometimes lose, and feel the heartache of not making the finals some years and things like that.
Well, but look at the bright side, though. Look at the bright side, though. When you're going to GWS to watch games, if your club doesn't win, you don't have the opposing supporters sledging you for your club not winning, because nobody's showing up at their games right now. So,
well, final series, people were showing up.
Yes,
and
they
were absolute, hard asses on us.
Yeah, you put a winner on the field, people will show up. Yeah.
Yeah. And once Toby Green got started on bashing our guys, we were just feral.
I bet. Oh yeah.
So, yeah. So it was a good time. And now that I've moved back to Melbourne to actually get eventually a salary to going and things like that, that I could actually afford membership. So I did it on my own.
Okay.
So like, my friends who, born and bred Melbourne have had their footy teams all their life, they paid for their memberships through their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And their parents have, either continued that because it's kind of maybe their family thing to do together. So they just get a family kind of sweep of the memberships at once, and then they would just continue that on. Or some of my friends, when they were born, they were put down for the MCC membership. So when they got theirs, through their teenage years or a little bit later, then they would have MCC membership. So I think I've only had membership for 4 years to my club, because that's when I moved back to Melbourne.
Okay.
But I've progressively developed a deeper love for the club. Not only through seeing more and more games when I was living in Sydney, but now that living here, and also my wife working with the foundation for the Western Bulldogs, we're both together.
Right.
It's something that we can do together now as well. So she was never a footy fan. We've been together now 18 years, so since high school. So we've gone on the journey together through our education and moving cities and all these things together.
Wow.
And she's really found fandom now, moving back to Melbourne, and now working at the community foundation.
Well, and I want to go back to you saying you've been a member now for 4 years, but and while all everybody who's been a supporter of their club, whether it's Richmond or St. Kilda or Carlton or whomever it happens to be, who's been a supporter since birth, or maybe since conception. I don't know exactly how it works. It's not, I don't think conception is actually taking place at the membership office, but who knows? But
our sex cells have little scarves on them down here, so they compete against each other.
There you go. But it's it's do they I was gonna say I would think that you have to just be so darn proud of that membership, because you made the decision to become a Bulldog supporter. It wasn't necessarily foisted upon you, where once you became cognizant of the world, and your parents and grandparents said, well, we're all Bulldog supporters, or whatever the case may be. You made that decision. So it's kind of like a badge of honor with you, and the fact your wife is working with the club is awesome as well.
Yeah, but I think there are certain people who be like yourself, who would be understanding of that, whereas there's a certain section which would call me a bandwagoner because I became a member after we won a premiership in 2016. So you can never win, basically. So there's some people who would say that's really cool and good on you and whatnot, but there's certain people who would say, well, you haven't been through the really tough times, so you're not a real supporter, which is, that's their opinion. And I don't agree.
And that's where you have to just kind of just let that, be like water off of a duck's back when somebody says that to you, because you didn't decide where you were going to be born. Yes, you decided on what university to go to when you went to Sydney, but I think that sounds like that was a fantastic opportunity for you, so it made sense for you to do that. But you were following the club there, and you were a college student at that time, so you know finances as a college student are at a point in time or something where you don't necessarily have a lot of disposable income where you can just go out and get yourself your out of state membership for the club that you've adopted. You're thinking, okay, I need to be able to buy enough ramen noodles to survive next month and for school.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So it hasn't happened that much, but it's certainly something that has come up. I don't know whether one day I might challenge someone on that point, but that's really, we're there to enjoy the footy, so
yeah,
I'll just let some of that slide. It's not a great personal attack to me that someone might think or say that, but one day there might be an opportunity to say, hang on, these, exactly as you say, those points.
Well, so, and who knows, maybe someday one of those people that is giving you grief about not being a Bulldog supporter for your entire life. I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and toss out a name that we mentioned off air. I'm gonna toss out the name of Frode Jernhardt. Frode's only been he became a Bulldog supporter in 2016. He started following the game in 2016. They happened to win the premiership that year. I would challenge. So
he's a lucky man.
I would challenge any Bulldog supporter to tell that man you're a bandwagoner, because he would call bullcrap on that. One, he's not going to have to do that because he's got such a great relationship with Bulldog supporters. But the fact is that man has maybe done more than just about anybody else who is a member to support that club, and he's doing it from the other side of the planet, because I know for a fact that he has every year at least a half dozen different memberships that he buys from the club, at least a half dozen, because every year I get a couple of the member stickers from the club that he sends to me that I put on my desk in my classroom. So I know he has plenty of them to go around. So I think while it may be frustrating, you're like, I can't, it'd be kind of like, which they don't have they don't have like an in-season trade period. But if they did, let's say that a player got traded from, the team that's going to win the wooden spoon. Let's just say that we go back to last year that, Todd Goldstein got traded from the Roos to the Cats to come in and, do a better job than Reece Stanley at the ruck position. And I don't know if he would ever not, but there have been people sledging on him going, well, you're not a true Cat because, you were with the Roos earlier. And he gets to look at him and says, what direction are my blue stripes pointing right now? They're 90 degrees different from where they were. I'm a Cat now. I'm not a Roo. So lighten up. So I think as much as it may be frustrating to you, I'm hoping that you just don't let it bother you.
That's right. I mean, I just have to ignore it. And, when I'm sitting right next to someone who has said this at the game, I just focus on the game and focus on the people that I do want to celebrate with and commiserate with, and not that person who I literally was sitting next to.
Now with your membership and with your wife working with the club, I mean, when the games are being played at Marvel, do you have the same set of seats for each game?
Well, I'm a paying member in my own right, so regardless of whether she works there, I can still go.
Okay, yeah.
And we would only go together when it suits both of us for whatever reason, and we can go together we can get nice seats with the rest of the club employees and people like that.
Okay.
When we go together, but I've been many times in my own right. I would, when I have visitors from Sydney or whoever who are interested in seeing a game, then I would take them with my membership. So I mean, she's only been working there a year and a half
Okay.
or so. So I definitely have my own membership in my own right, and she gets a free membership, but she would equally, if she stopped working there and moved on somewhere else, she would definitely then pay for her own. So
Okay.
and yeah, so we would sometimes have, nice seats or something else, or different seats, or we'd like to sit with her work colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
So we sit all together in that regard. But yeah, we see a lot of the games out at Ballarat as well.
Mm-hmm.
You aware of Ballarat being like
Yeah,
1.5 hours west of Mel? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
That's where the
yeah,
that's where the AFLW team tends to play their games, correct? Isn't it?
Not necessarily. So they would play a few games out there,
Okay.
but just like the men's team, they play also the men's, and the AFLW team will
Mhm.
play locally. But so we would have some more involvement out at Ballarat because they need the people power as well, and sometimes we would be involved in kind of like the proceedings of the event a little more, like
Okay.
and help out with the various engagements that they have to do and things. So Michelle is accredited to be on field and interact as part of the event side of
Okay.
things as well.
That's awesome.
So that's nice. Yeah, it is nice. Especially because we both love the club very much.
Yeah, I mean,
so we're happy to volunteer our time for that.
It is just, and I think I mentioned it to you off air, that I say this all the time. I do think that there is a love affair that goes on between supporters of clubs and their clubs, and I think it's a two-way street, because the clubs don't exist without the supporters, and in theory the supporters don't exist without the club, because what else are they going to do with their time? What else? How are they going to you're not going to be watching sport here in the United States, because a lot of that's gone downhill lately, which is one of the reasons why I'm so glad I discovered footy.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like with my club, I have a sense of ownership towards it, because being a paying member, it pays for the salaries and it pays for the building, and it feels very open to engagement with members. Like we would attend the AGM when we can, and all of the events is available to us as members. But as a side to that, with Michelle being paid by the community foundation that the Bulldogs run, then they also keep our lights on, so we're very grateful for that too. And it's such a nice feeling that both where my wife works and where we both enjoy our entertainment for the weekend is one and the same.
Yeah, that's
most
a great
people wouldn't agree well, that would be normally a good thing. But because it's footy, then yeah, that's great.
Hasn't happened at my house yet. For those of you who've not listened before, I put out a something a few weeks ago. My wife, who's never watched a second of footy, and I took a unique approach. I found a couple of articles from several years back where a couple of different clubs were training out on the beach and such, and there was Hawthorne, out training, and there was Jager O'Meara, out in his budgie smuggler training on the beach. So I found these articles and I sent them to her, and I thought, you know what, maybe this will get her interested in watching the game. Did not at all. But so she said, well, I'll watch one quarter of a game. So I asked people, well, what one quarter of a game should I show her? And then I thought, I really would like her to watch like one of those little quick, like 5-minute things on like, what is the AFL? So she had a bit of an understanding. And then she said, well, I don't need to know the rules. I'll just watch a quarter because I'm never going to watch anymore. So I'm at the point now where I'm like, the heck with it. I'm not going to force the issue. Okay.
Yeah. I was a bit more subtle with my with Michelle.
Yeah.
You know, she grew up in West Footscray, which is where the club is based, and her family was not a footy family at all whatsoever. Her dad has this story of, so he's from Malta and immigrated with his wife, which is Michelle's mum, in the 70s, and they came over to Australia, and you know, it would have been a huge culture shock for them, etc. But then I think they felt the culture shock most when he went to the footy with his colleagues at work. He said, "This is a violent sport. I cannot go to this. The people in the stands are feral." Like, it would have been horrible back then. It really would have. You wouldn't have taken your wife or your kids there. But nowadays, it's a totally different kettle of fish. It's quite a family-friendly sport. So he just wrote it off, basically say, "I cannot watch this," because he would have seen, you know, people throwing cans of beer at each other's heads and all sorts of rubbish. So he kind of wrote it off, and they were never really interested in it. And because of my, you know, peaking interest over time in footy, and then eventually becoming a member, and then eventually bringing Michelle to games, and then us, I think where Michelle became most involved as culturally in the sport was through the women's game, because it's a relatively newer spectacle. It's more widely open to fans of different cultures, genders, sexual orientations. AFLW was a very welcoming place for all, much more family friendly than the men's game, according to some, much more accepting that women could support a contact sport, or be involved in contact sport. And it was something that, you know, her and some of her friends would really enjoy going to the AFLW because of those reasons, and because of the culture, and seeing something and supporting something which they just naturally agree with seeing.
Yeah. And the thing with the Bulldogs is that, you know, at the outset, you know, Coach Burke has done a great job with that club, you know, from, you know,
and we love Berkey.
Yeah.
So, so I think, you know, her peak in footy had been through this kind of maybe the more women's route, going there in the summertime, going to the club in the summertime. And then she was looking for work when we moved back to Melbourne. She done all sorts of kind of odd jobs with the university, because she is a researcher, has a PhD. And then she wanted to move out of the research area and was looking for work. And I just was Googling away, and I was like, scrolling through Western Bulldogs stuff like I always was doing. And I said, look at this job, you know. There's community foundation that Western Bulldogs has. They focus on health and well-being of people in the community. And it was kind of in line with her ethos and what she wanted to do with work. So I encouraged her to apply, and, you know, we were there both working on her cover letter, her application, so that she would just have every chance possible to get this job. Not like I would normally do that, but because this was such a nice opportunity, and I just loved the club by then. And, you know, she has then developed even further engagement with the club because of incidental, you know, engagement in a way, but also finding it on her own.
Yeah, I just pulled up on my other screen. I just pulled up the foundation page, which I will link to in the show notes, so people can check that out and see the kinds of things that they do, because it's, you know, and I know that every club has something like this, but it's just awesome to to know that you're, and this is where it's such an interesting situation, because, you kind of feel, that people are giving you grief about you being a bandwagon supporter, Johnny come lately, if you will. And then you're thinking, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
My family is putting our money where our mouths are, because, not only have I become a supporter of this club, my spouse is working for this organization as well. I mean, so that you have a lot of vested interest in this club, that maybe, and I don't know if that's something that, I don't know if that's, that fifth ace that you pull out of your sleeve when you're playing, Texas Hold'em, and go, boom, there's my fifth ace, I just won, that discussion, because I'm able to mention that. But I mean, you've got something that not a lot of other people have. Sure, people are members, but they're not also members and working within the club as well. I mean, you're in a very unique position, which is really, really kind of cool.
Well, yeah, I'm very proud of the work that she does, and proud of the club that actually engages in this kind of work. Because, yeah, I mean, we work on community health and well-being from different angles, both of us.
Right,
so
right.
I work in the local hospitals as a doctor, and we tackle health and well-being of our communities from both angles. She wants to keep people away from hospital, and I see them once they're in hospital. So
well, and you want to get them to the point where they're ready to leave also, so it's, but yeah,
exactly right. Go back to the community. And so out in the West, we have a demographic which is disadvantaged to some extent, lower socio-economic status, but we're a very proud and supportive community at the same time. We lift each other up. We make sure every neighbor that we have is okay, and that everything can be done to improve people's well-being, and to be welcoming to others from overseas as refugees, or as newly arrived Australians, or
right,
any sort of demographic. So, and that's what the Community Foundation does, is they run programs to support the health and well-being of people of these groups, older, younger, youth groups, immigrant groups. They're done in their languages that they understand, in the culturally safe manner, from peoples of those communities. So incredible work, and incredibly rewarding. She comes home every day going, I'm exhausted, but she goes to bed at night, saying, this is something that's positive.
But it's a good kind of exhausted. It's a good thing. It's a rewarding thing for her. I mean, and I think that it would have to be the same thing as you being a physician, me being a school teacher. When I come home, there are some days where the school day is over, and it's like, well, not much went well that day. But there are also days where you have things that click with kids, because I've had thousands of students over the years, and I have kids that have have struggled, that school is not their thing, and that type of thing. And it's just it's just, when you see them have success, in school, and then have some success, in life once they've left school, it's really neat to see the kids that that have gone out and gone on to do great things. I mean, and I teach mostly kids who are 16, 17, some that are 18 in their last couple years of high school. So I see them right before they're heading out. So it's not, my daughter's training to be an elementary teacher, so her kids will not be done with school for another 8 to 10 to 12 years after they've been in her class. So that's going to be a while before you see the final results, if you will. So I get to kind of see what happens right at the tail end, and make different kinds of connections than even some like elementary teachers make. But there have been some phenomenal stories with kids that I've had, and of course there have been some horrific ones also. I mean, I had my first year teaching. This is the absolute truth. My first year teaching, my first period class of my first year, I think I had 11 students in that first period class, first year of teaching back in 1994. 2 of them ended up being convicted murderers. 2 of them are
Wow. Yeah.
2 of them are in prison for the rest of their life for murder. So I look at it now and I'm thinking things cannot get that bad ever again. I mean, that I got that awful situation out of the way. First class, first year teaching. I'm not going to have to worry about that sort of thing ever again. But yeah, it was just, one of them has been in jail since he was like 22. And he's not eligible to get out of prison to get paroled until like 2045. So he'll be like 70 years old before he's even eligible to get out, to get an early release. The other one is never getting out of prison. He's going to be there the rest of his life. So, but
that level of social hardship is just unimaginable.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's crazy because I tell the kids that I have in class now, I say, guys, you know what? We have issues. We have things that we deal with. We butt heads from time to time. I said, but you know what? You're never going to top my first period class in my first year of teaching. So, I mean, I'm not concerned about you. We're going to be fine here. We're going to get along. This is going to be great because that's not going to happen again. Knock wood. But no, it's not going to happen. I got great kids.
So what, because you have this these social issues within your community, what do the sports teams do to try to address this?
Well,
are there things that are kind of equivalent to what I was saying about what we have here?
Not really. I mean, we don't have, the schools all have basically their school teams, like the high school where I teach at, all of the local high schools will have, football, basketball, soccer, baseball, volleyball, cross country running, track teams, for boys and girls, most of the sports, some of them are girls only sports. Some of them are football is a guy's sport, but we have men and women's soccer, track, basketball, or men and women's swimming. But it's in a way it's kind of cliquish because it's that school, they're representing that school. But that's one of the neat things that I find so fascinating about footy is those local community clubs. Because you'd mentioned that you were, you mentioned that you had moved to Wagga Wagga at one time, and I that name rung a bell with me, and I looked it up real quickly because I think they played in the same. It was like the Ovens and something league with. I interviewed somebody from Albury, from I think the Albury Tigers, who was associated with that club. I think they play in the same league of footy because it's right there on the border between the two states. So they kind of and those local clubs, those are community clubs. I mean, that's something that the whole like small town, depending upon where it is, or that neighborhood in Melbourne or that neighborhood in Geelong, it's something that whole community can coalesce around. And it kind of happens. It kind of happens with high school sports here, but we don't have anything that's like the local clubs, like that sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah. Now that you mentioned the local footy and how important it can be, like, when I was living in Sydney, I had this friend who brought us out to Bathurst to visit one of her friends, and we were all mutual friends together. And we went to her local footy club, and they're called the Bathurst Bush Rangers.
Okay.
And she played in the women's team, and their nickname was affectionately the Lady Bushies. And they really owned that. They really owned it. And, it was kind of a time when, yes, AFLW was in its nascence, but people were still dealing with the fact that women were playing a contact sport like AFL.
Right.
And being rough and going, oh, that must have hurt. But an equivalent tackle in men's were just like, oh, that's all part of it kind of thing. So it was nice to see people that I knew play this sport,
Mm-hmm.
who were, in it because they love it and because they want to grow in ways that they probably couldn't have, or their parents couldn't have.
Right.
To gain confidence, to run at each other at full pelt and make those tackles
Yeah.
and the marks and fall to the ground just like their brothers did.
Yeah. It's
and one of my other friends, who's this small Vietnamese girl who probably weighs 45 kilos, did the same thing.
yeah.
She played for the North Sunshine Roadrunners,
Okay.
and developed an interest in sport, full stop, just from that.
Mm-hmm.
She was never a sporty kind of person, but liked running, so she was good on the footy field.
Well, footy is definitely a place to do the running when you figure that you
Yeah.
got some midfielders
Yeah.
are running 13, 14, 15 kilometers a game, which is just
Yeah.
crazy.
So she would be a pioneer for her own daughter,
Mm-hmm.
who's not even a year old now. Saying you can do whatever you want, be as strong and as fit and
Yeah.
as brave and as confident as the boys.
Yeah.
Which I think is such a great message.
Now, we've talked an awful lot about your family, your relationship with footy. Now, before we wrap that up, have you been able to get your father-in-law back to a game?
Getting my father-in-law out to anywhere is kind of a thing, because
Okay.
he's very set in his ways, but he does ask about it, and
Okay.
He probably will come to a game one of these days, I think. Yeah. But it will be, to get him out anywhere, even to a local restaurant, is an ordeal. So, and it's not the most relaxing time for the wife and I to do so. So
Okay.
we'd rather do that together and have a few beers and not have to worry about it.
Okay. Or bring takeout over to the house. Hey, we picked this up for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
well,
we'd definitely watch, and he's watched the grand finals before on TV and stuff like that.
There you go.
For him to go to a game with 40,000 other people would be a lot.
Okay. Well, and that's fair. That's, I mean, I'm hoping that definitely do that myself, but at some time in the near future. But we talked about another completely different issue when we were chatting the other day on the message board on Instagram, and you shared a links to a couple to a story, and I looked at the story from the vantage point of Fox Footy, and it's something that I had been a little, I don't know if reluctant is the right word in terms of broaching the subject during the podcast, because I certainly don't want to do it a disservice at all, because I'm not Gil McLaughlin was being interviewed, and where the headline from the Fox Footy article is that where he said, I can understand gay players in the AFL choosing not to be first out. Gil McLaughlin says publicly, so, and I know this is a kind of a real difficult subject to talk about and to broach, but you brought it up, and I hadn't really thought about it, but the article goes on to talk about, as we mentioned off air, when the women's comp came into existence, it was kind of like a group effort where people who were identifying as part of the LGBTQ community, I'm probably leaving a letter or something off of there, but that they kind of came out en masse. It wasn't it wasn't and or maybe it had even already been that person had already, their sexual identity had already been known before the AFL began. So, but it's kind of being it's kind of difficult being the the pioneer, if you will. being the first person to do something. It's like
I can't even imagine. But yeah, the AFLW, I guess, set out to make that point of difference, I guess, and be from the outset very open. And I think this is why there's a huge following of non-traditional AFL followers who went to the AFLW and say, this is, a place where I feel welcome, or my friends would feel welcome. So they might have seen the men's game to be quite a male-dominated, traditional, conservative, if not bigoted area of the game, whereas they might have seen the AFLW as much more open and accepting. And if that fit within their world ethos, then they would go to it and support it and put their money to it. So if you've ever watched, they're quite interesting documentaries from, Amazon Prime and Disney Plus, the documentaries about the AFLW. They're much like the Drive to Survive kind of documentary on Netflix. And you see like the real faces behind it and how they've, struggled with these issues and things like that. And then you look at the men's game and you go, wow, that's a totally different culture, for various reasons. Maybe there's still conservative undertones or masculine ideals that they have to still live up to, and all sorts of things. But Gillen has said that he knows that players that have different sexual orientations from heterosexual, and he knows that they've come out to their
teammates,
to their teammates, but no one is being the first to come out to the wider public, which is either an indictment on the public or the way that the organizations are set up, or whatever. Because there are so many other areas of sport in life where this is not an issue, like in other sports.
Yeah, but I think that I think we also have to tip our caps to the teammates of those players who have made that known within that circle, and that they've not leaked that out, and they've not, that's not made it to the public airwaves to some reporter or something like that, that they have not betrayed that trust. So I was going to ask you, do you think there is a correlation between not wanting to be the first person to come out and self-identify and proclaim that, yes, I am gay, or whatever the case may be, that, we've seen just in the last couple of weeks with, the comments made towards Jamar Ugle-Hagan, the ones towards Charlie Cameron and Isaac Rankin here in the last week or so. The number of times, that Eddie Betts, had horrible things said to him, Nicky Winmar, Adam Goods. I mean, this has been, when it's been a race-driven thing. And again, Gil McLaughlin is saying that he knows that there are gay players in the AFL, and that's fine. Great. And when they want to announce that they are, that's the life that they're leading, and that's what they choose to do, more power to them. Because it's not our place to say yes or no. It's not our place to say, well, you need to let everybody know about whatever it happens to be at that point. It's none of our damn business, quite frankly, until they want to tell somebody. And maybe they never tell anybody. But I just wonder if they're concerned about hearing that from fans, who maybe are just there to be maybe a little bit disrespectful or looking to try to get under somebody's skin, because
that's right. Yeah.
Because again, I don't know who these people are that are saying things to Jamar Ugle-Hagan, but is that person actually a racist? I don't know. Maybe, Or are they saying something to try to get him off of his game so he doesn't go out and kick 5 goals against that person's team? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, is this something where they're trying to just, get under that, get into that person's head and mess with them so they don't play at their peak performance?
Yeah.
I think neither one's acceptable, I don't think.
Yeah, but I think what has been good about the response to Jamara's issue was that the response was very clear. It was very concerted, and it was all singing to the same tune that this is never acceptable.
Right.
So
exactly.
I think it re-challenged, like this comes up every now and again, and it re-challenged where our society is and what progress we have made and what is yet to come. And I think across all issues of diversity, we'll be able to see whether progress has been made on many different fronts. So there are lots of people in Australia, and I'm sure this is the case where you are, that there's no room for politics in sport is kind of like the catch cry.
Right.
But I totally disagree, because I think sport is an important part of our society, especially in Australia, and our society is reflected in those sports. So what we do to help each other, or which kind of people we're happy to accept or not accept, is then reflected in exactly what we say and do, and what the policies are around these issues.
And I, and as we talked about, in our discussion last week, I'm kind of in a unique situation here that I've not mentioned on this show before. I have a cousin who is in a same-sex marriage. She's been married. She and her wife have been married for 25 years or so. But what is even more interesting, if you're listening here in the United States, the way, well, first of all, if you're listening overseas, if you, with us being a republic, when same-sex marriage was being debated, discussed, that sort of thing, marriage laws are a state issue. States get to decide on marriage laws in terms of age when people can get married, that sort of thing. There was a time in our country where interracial marriage was not legal. In the early 1960s, in the state of Virginia, there was a Supreme Court case, Loving v. Virginia, that finally overturned Virginia's ban on interracial marriage. But many states had legalized same-sex marriage. It was happening. It was, probably 40% of the states had already legalized same-sex marriage. But if you got married in state A, your marriage was recognized as legal in state B, whether or not same-sex marriage was legalized in that state, the way our Constitution is written. So your marriage was legal
at
there.
At a federal level.
So it was legal in the other state. But there was a push here in the United States to basically have the federal government, kind of get involved in this. And there was a court case that ultimately got heard by the United States Supreme Court that basically compelled all of those states that had not yet legalized same-sex marriage to legalize it in their states without their voters or their legislatures having decided to vote on it. And what is really interesting about this is a case, and you can look it up online, called Obergefell v. Hodges, and the name of the plaintiff and the defendant. And what is interesting is that the Obergefell, a gentleman by the name of James Obergefell, is the uncle of the teacher who teaches in the classroom right next door to mine. So his uncle,
it's incredible. Yeah.
His uncle, was he and his husband were the ones that pushed this case into the Supreme Court, and the courts legalized it across the United States. So it was happening here, but just not at the speed that people who were wanting to see it universal across the country were thrilled about. They wanted to see it expedited. And I'll put a link to the I'll actually put a link to, I'm going to put the name up there so I remember to do that. So if you want to read up on the case, you can do that.
Mm.
I'll put that in the show notes as well, because I have that case bookmarked on my computer because I teach government, and it is one of
Yeah.
I teach 4 sections of government each day. So it's been interesting, but I just we have had there have been many athletes here in the United States who have come out
Mm-hmm.
openly and identified as being gay or lesbian, and there are others who have not until after they've retired.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Jason Collins, who played basketball in the NBA, was in 2013. He was the first NBA player to come out and say that he was gay. That's in 2013. Michael Sam, who played in the NFL for a very short period of time, when they were getting ready to, just like the AFL draft, they were getting ready to hold the NFL draft. He came out as gay right before the draft happened, and
Mm-hmm.
at that point in time, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think he even got drafted. He ended up signing as a free agent with teams. I don't think he ended up getting. Let me check here real quickly, because I don't. Oh yeah, he got picked in the 7th round, so in the last round of the draft. So he might have, had he. And I'm not saying he should have done this, but it may have scared some teams, because the team might have been concerned about how is this going to get accepted by our fan base, because
Yeah.
so some teams maybe decided not to draft him until later on. He played for the Los Angeles Rams and Dallas Cowboys for a little bit, and then he played in the Canadian Football League for a year. But then there's one player in the NFL that's playing right now by the name of Carl Nassib, who has come out as gay. He's the first person he's the only player that is currently playing that's announced that he is gay. But you've been a number of athletes in soccer and swimming and other sports, and sports that I don't necessarily follow, so I'm not really sure about who all of them happen to be. But I'm politically I'm more conservative, but I don't care what I'm probably more libertarian about a lot of things. We're just as long as you're not hurting me and you're not hurting somebody else, do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just it's but I don't I don't really care. I mean, I think the world of my cousin. She's they're a great couple. They they get along famously. They're living happy lives and such. I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, in Australia there was an NRL player. So again, a very masculine sport. These guys are built like your NFL players, huge shoulders and things like this. He's Ian Roberts. He came out in the 1999 or something, and he was the first Australian sports person, I think, to come out. Full stop. So there was huge media storm around it, and then issues around fans and all this stuff was then explored. I think it would be in the AFL's interest to maybe, now that Gillen has come, in the media to say this kind of thing, maybe there could be a way for many players to come out all at once, so that they're not the first. So that they could do a similar thing where it's in numbers, and then people will realize actually, it's not about clubs, it's not about individuals, it's actually an issue that they want to step forward over. And with the AFLW, it's just shown that there's a whole demographic of the community, either allies or people who identify, who are going to games and are putting money where their mouth is to that game, because it agrees with them culturally. So they could actually appeal to all these other people who want to follow the sport, but don't because of cultural differences or whatever. So I think, if AFL men's was cool again with this whole demographic of allies and people, then maybe they'll actually do better in the end.
Well, let me ask you this question, because I don't know if with the gather round happening in Adelaide right now. I wonder if did this story happen this week because all 18 clubs are in the same city at the same time? Is this, and again, you mentioned something that was rather interesting there. Maybe this is something that's been going on behind the scenes, that this, everybody keeps saying, the Gil's swan song is happening. Gil's stepping aside here pretty soon. He's going to go do something else. And, he's leaving pretty soon. And, we mentioned Monty Python earlier, Gil stepping away from his job is an awful lot like the knight who's running towards the castle and in the Holy Grail. And the two guards are standing there and they keep watching this guy running towards him and he doesn't get any closer. Okay. So I wonder, and this is you may have hit on something there, that is there an announcement that's going to be coming at the end of the gather round? And I'm speculating here where maybe these athletes in particular that you're referencing, and again, I don't know if the clubs who've already played have stuck around in Adelaide or if they've gone home. They've probably gone home. So maybe I'm just talking out of my left ear here. But, maybe they were going to have that group of players make that proclamation at that time because he had kind of set the table with that article that came out earlier in the week. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting speculation. And I think that would have been a good opportunity to do it if they had been organizing it in the background. But who knows?
Yeah.
I think maybe it could be a legacy of Gil's in the end if he is wanting to progress the culture of the game a little bit further. But, we've just been sitting here talking about 10 minutes about this thing. And, it is in the news and, you talked about, changing the laws and stuff. It is politics. All of this is politics.
It is. It absolutely
is. It's funny to say,
it's
funny to say that sport and politics are not one and the same in a way.
Well, it has been interesting because we've had here in the United States, and if you're listening in the United States, about this story, but one of the largest beer brands in the United States, Anheuser-Busch, yes, well, but Bud Light, but Bud Light. Just this past week, there's this person by the name of Dylan Mulvaney who has decided that he's now going to live as a woman now, and had just reached like the 1 year point of it. But Dylan has been signing all sorts of promotional deals where he's promoting a lot of product and such. Well, Anheuser-Busch, Bud Light is kind of the beer of the person that works at the steel mill, or that works on the farm and finishes the 14-hour shift in the farm and goes and has 2 or 3 beers and that sort of thing. Well,
which is hilarious for us because light beer in Australia is considered a wusses drink.
Yeah. Well, but they have made Dylan Mulvaney their spokesperson for Bud Light, and the marketing director for the company had basically said that the brand name had been kind of losing market share, and they wanted and then Bud Light had been kind of the beer of frat boys and people telling off color, politically incorrect jokes and this sort of thing. Well, in the last week and a half, Anheuser-Busch, their stock has lost like $5 billion with a B dollars in value because of protests and boycotts and that sort of thing. Like $5 billion worth of this because people are pushing back against it. And it's been interesting because he has been, and that's where the
rubber hits the road, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because it's about the cash.
Yeah.
So if the AFL here is worried about sponsors and stuff, then it actually will have the opposite an even greater response. I think that people go towards the brands that
I
are
think,
aligning with clubs.
I think you might be
which
right.
are supportive.
I think you might be right because I think that that the AFL AFLW is in a much better position for that than the NFL or Major League Baseball. Despite the efforts that are made here, I think that they're definitely more in line and prepared for that sort of thing happening. But it's but it's just
because it's
go ahead.
It's amazing that we kind of still have a don't ask, don't tell kind of mentality like you guys did in the US military.
Oh yeah, we did
in the men's game.
Yeah,
and you had that repealed. So Bush put it in. No, so it was Clinton that put it in, and then Obama took it out. So,
well, yeah, I mean, yeah, because
that was around the same time that marriage was an issue, and then the service people could actually marry and openly marry as service people as well. So
yeah. Because
so
I
kind of pulling all that in at the same time.
Yeah, because I spent 4 years in the Navy back in the 1980s, and my son is an officer in the Navy at the moment. So he's been in since 2019. So he's been in a little over 4 years now, or almost 4 years now.
Incredible, yeah.
Yeah, but so that was a really heavy subject that I wasn't sure if I was ever going to approach that subject or broach that subject on the podcast, but I think we did it a good service. I think we were very respectful of the issue. Like I said, I was a little concerned about even talking about that subject matter on here because I didn't I don't know who it may alienate, may not alienate, whatever the case may be. But I think we handled that with the decorum that was necessary for it. So, do you want to get into some lighter subjects before we wrap this up today?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. So
go ahead.
Okay. So these, we kind of touched on these subjects beforehand, so you knew what those other ones we had talked about here. You have not seen these yet, but I'm
both scared and excited.
Oh, they're not that bad. These are there's no wrong answer. Okay, there's no wrong answer.
Okay.
So who is the great? I don't want to say footy player. Who's the greatest athlete that you have ever seen perform in person?
That's incredibly difficult. I would say now that Jamara's kind of image is kind of burnt in all of our collective consciousness now, it's just incredible. And to see him play as a young man who came his first game for the Western Bulldogs, that was incredible because there was such there always is a level of hype with new players coming in who show promise and things, but when it's your club with a young man like that who represents the club in such a positive way and who plays so well and shows that promise, and you learn more about his culture, where his family is from, through people like that.
Exactly.
You learn about the wider issues through people like that. And the fact that he's just amazing on field, but he's still got a long way to go and a lot of development to do.
Right. Yeah. See, I wouldn't know much.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know much about that because I'm a Cat supporter. So bringing young players into the side, I don't know a whole lot about that.
Yeah. Yeah. But with Liberatore's 200th game, I've always found him to be an incredible athlete and such a strong personality on field and off that he's basically the lifeblood of our club because his father played, who won a Brownlow medal after fight back and as the club was kind of getting its feet again.
Yeah.
To have that history behind him, as well as him in his own right having his own personality and fight on the field and off. It's just, he's amazing. I've never seen a midfielder get on top of both ball and other men as well as him. Like, he comes running from nowhere, gets his head over the ball without fear. When his mates are in a tuffle, he's the first one there.
Yes, he
defending
is.
them and pulling others away. And yeah, I mean, every club has this one guy who does that, but for me, it's him.
Yeah.
And of course, Marcus Bontempelli is just an incredible athlete and incredible leader. And when he has the ball, you feel safe. And
that's a good way. That's a good way of putting it. That's a good way of putting it. So
yeah, he had a off and on years the last couple of years, but he's looking pretty good so far, I think.
Well,
I think he's on fire, the whole team's on fire.
Yeah. I think he was nicked up a little bit last year too. I don't think he was totally healthy last year.
Yeah, no. I think they continued to play him, although he wasn't 100%.
Yeah.
But, the fact that we did okay.
Yes, exactly.
Didn't make it to reach the pinnacle, but we were doing okay the last few years.
Now, this just popped into my head here, but as a physician, when you're watching a game and you see something occur on the field, are you sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, okay, I know this is probably what happened to him?
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of peak performing athletes as well as the team around them, it's hard to tell exactly what's going on or what's the issue, but clearly it was one of his feet. Maybe he had like a stress fracture or something that he could never heal because he was still playing, basically.
Right.
Who knows what was going on, but people were commenting that it's probably one of the feet. But yeah, with acute injuries, ACLs and sprains and ligamentous tears and concussions and rib fractures and all these wonderful things that happen on field, you're like, this is cool, and this is what I would do if someone came in with this issue. But I've seen footy players who come to hospital after their Saturday game, with ankle issues. They think that they've broken things, and we x-ray them and pat them on the head and say, no, it's okay, it's a sprain. You can just, ease off for the next little while. And if you continue to have pain, then see a doctor and, take some rest time off the footy field for a while and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's been fun to see it from both sides, I guess. But, the professional elite athletes, they don't come to our hospital. They go to the private physicians and they have their own doctors, and they go to the private hospitals, not the humble local public.
Well, maybe someday both husband and wife can work for the Western Bulldogs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm absolutely enamored by Dr. Zimmerman, who's long-standing team doctor, and
that's the gentleman with the guy with the really bushy hair, is it not? Yep, and the big mustache.
The really awesome. That's right. Yeah. He's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So what inspires you
in life?
Yeah.
I get a huge kick out of seeing people do well, helping others. When you see someone's face light up when you arrive and you're there to help them, and you help them to ease their pain or their suffering or whatever it might be, whatever is going on in their life. If you're an empathetic ear, then you can do wonders with people. And, I get as much out of it as maybe they do. So I don't do it for only altruistic reasons.
Right.
Yes, I get a salary and all that stuff, but I get a huge kick out of people who come to me and say, I need help with this, and I do whatever I can to try to get them there.
Okay. Okay. Um, this is a completely different angle this one's coming from. Okay.
Mm.
You have just been given the opportunity. You've been put in charge
Yeah.
of scheduling a concert at Marvel Stadium. Okay. What three acts do you have coming in to perform at your music festival?
Well, isn't that just funny? Because one of my favorite bands of all time, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, came to play at Marvel Stadium just before the footy season started. So
Okay.
they were part of the whole furor of, oh, we're seeing all these concerts come into Marvel Stadium, and is the turf going to hold up?
Mm-hmm.
So we had Chili Peppers, Harry Styles, and Ed Sheeran all in like one period of like a month or something just before the footy season started. And I was fortunate enough to go and see them there. So I'd see them again. I would
Okay.
invite them back. And another American band, which I have not been able to see in my life yet, is Pearl Jam.
Okay.
I love Pearl Jam. So kind of, I'm a bit of a late 80s, early 90s kind of American rock
Nothing wrong with that.
fan.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And probably the third one, the Rolling Stones.
Okay.
Because I have
Okay.
never seen them before. And I think before they all pass away, it would be amazing.
Let's just be honest. Keith Richards is going to outlive all of us. Okay.
Oh, yes. Yeah. My
Yeah.
dad is a huge Rolling Stones fan.
Mhm.
And he was able to see them in their prime of their life.
Okay.
And yeah, it'd be quite something to see them.
Now, after the Red Hot Chili Peppers performed at Marvel, do you know, and I don't know if you would know this or not, but with your wife, kind of working alongside the club, do you know, did Marvel Stadium actually then spray for fleas?
Flea is from Melbourne.
He's
from Melbourne.
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah. He was born to an Australian family.
Okay.
And he moved to the States when he was quite young, but he spent his early childhood in Melbourne.
Awesome. I had no clue.
Yeah,
I had no clue on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Last concert I got to was February of last year, and it was Ghost and Volbeat. Yeah. So
beyond me, sorry.
Oh, well, you know what? If you like Pearl Jam, if you like Red Hot Chili, you might actually like Volbeat. You might like Volbeat.
Okay.
Ghost. If you just listen to the music, you'd think, okay, this is a pretty interesting band. They're scary to look at. It's a scary band to look at, but the music is very poppy. It's very kind of almost like an 80s hard rock pop kind of vibe with their music. But there's a little bit of Alice Cooper meets Slipknot combined into terms of like their stage presence, if you will. With them.
That sounds right up my alley.
Yeah, you would. I'll send you a couple links for them. Yeah. So
yeah.
Okay. So, what is the best and the worst advice you have ever been given in your life?
I think the best advice had come from my parents, I guess. Like the golden rule, just do unto others as. And yeah, it's just something that has just rung true so much throughout my life. Like always being there as much as you can to help others and be empathetic to others' struggles and things like that. And because if one day you found yourself in that situation, you would have people who come to your side. So that's one of the things that we've grown up with. Worst advice ever? I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes when I take my own advice, it can be really bad when I make the wrong choices in life.
Okay.
So, but my friends and family are not scared of telling me what they think, and sometimes I come around on what I think because of that.
Yeah, and that's
Mm.
I have in my classroom I have like 450 quotes that are printed out on like individual pieces of like Xerox paper that are hanging on the walls around my room. And the one that's hanging, and it's kind of what you just said about your friends there. It's the only one that's printed in color, and I found a font that almost looks like it has dripping blood on it. And it's an Oscar Wilde it's an Oscar Wilde quote that says, "True friends stab you in the front."
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I tell him, I said, that to me, I said, here's all these other inspirational political quotes, that sort of thing, cynical things that are up there as well. But I said, to me, as a kid, as a teenager, I said, that one to me might be the most important one that's there, because it's all about how you treat your friends. It's about how you expect to be treated by your friends, that sort of thing. And it gets back to like your golden rule, do the right thing, if you will. I mean, it's along that, being decent to one another,
But yeah, sometimes being decent to one another is giving people the hard truth, and
right, exactly.
And saying, you're doing the wrong thing with your life and that kind of thing. But because they're your best friend, then you respect
Exactly.
that, and then you can get those wake up calls in life.
Yep. Okay. We're back to one of those things with three. I've got two more questions for you. I think I might know the answer to the last question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. But what three movies do you think everybody should see?
I'm not a massive film buff, but I would say one of my favorite films of all time, which is, commonly quoted around as well, is Shawshank Redemption. That's just one of the greatest all-time films, in my opinion.
Filmed about 40.
That's a good one.
Filmed about 45 minutes south of where I live. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
That was filmed about 40 miles away from here.
Amazing. Yeah. There you go.
Mm-hmm. In fact, before you go on, in fact, with you being a Pearl Jam fan and Red Hot Chili Peppers, this is one of those things you may want to put on your bucket list. Every summer here, they do a huge 3-day music festival there. It's based hard rock metal festival called, and it brings in like dozens and dozens, and you may not have to go there to do this, but it has dozens and dozens of tattoo artists from all over the country. It's called Incarceration, like for incarceration. They have this they have this huge concert called Incarceration at the old prison. And what's interesting is that the new prison is right next door.
Yeah.
The new prison is right next door to it, right next to the one that Shawshank was shot in. So that one may need to go on your bucket list. Yeah, I've not been to that show yet, but yeah.
Amazing. Okay. The other two, I don't know. There's a lot of like Australian film, which is quite nice, but is it life-changing? Maybe, I don't know. I guess one of the other films that was really amazing was what's it called? It's a Japanese anime, Light of the Fireflies by Studio Ghibli, about the dropping of the bombs over Japan.
Okay.
Shown from a child's perspective.
Yeah.
That's a pretty amazing film. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I usually like these kind of, sentimental films, I guess.
Okay. Okay. So, last one before we wrap up. What are you most proud of in your life?
Probably my wife, really. We've
good answer.
Grown up to no, seriously. Like,
no. I'm being sincere. That's that should be it. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Because we don't have children yet, so then, we may never have children. We're not. It's not on the cards at the moment. But Yeah, I mean, we met when we were 17,
Mm-hmm.
so the last year of high school. She gave me the kick up the butt I guess I needed to actually do well academically, because she knew that I had brains but didn't have any motivation. And she has both. She's got brains and motivation, way smarter than I.
Well, and
Um,
evidently very pointy shoes, because having a PhD and also your medical degree, yeah, she definitely got you motivated there. So that's awesome.
yeah, so like because she did so well academically because she was motivated, I think that kind of inspired me to do the same. And then
Mm-hmm.
going through my undergraduate degree and then PhD, and then she was then thinking about doing a PhD while I had already started mine. And so we just been such a good influence on each other to do well and to work towards something that we feel like is that makes us happy, and then that makes us feel rewards because we're both out to try to improve other people's well-being and help others as much as we can, and we're both very fortunate and grateful that we're able to get a job out of that.
Well, and it sounds like the two of you are a true partnership. That it sounds like that each one of you is the other's biggest advocate.
Yeah, I mean, because we've both studied for such a long time, there's been times when I've been working a job and she's been studying, not earning a salary. So we've supported each other as we've flip-flopped between working and studying over these years. So I think that's something to be proud of. Yeah,
Absolutely should be. Yeah, it absolutely should be.
because we've done it together. We couldn't have done it without each other, really.
That is awesome. That's awesome. And whether or not you decide to to grow your family, if you decide to do that someday, I'm supremely confident your kids are going to be awesomely successful as well, because
we'll probably just get more cats and dogs and ducks and other animals to look after. And
okay, well,
why not?
Okay, well, how far
once
out
we have
how far out in the suburbs are you if you have ducks? I mean, it's
no. So I live basically 1 kilometer from the center of Melbourne, so our view is of the Melbourne city.
Okay.
So we're not in a position at the moment to have ducks, but when we have other houses and nice holiday houses and things, then maybe we'll have
there you go
the opportunity to have more of a farm.
Okay, well, Tim, I do appreciate you taking time out of your Saturday morning. I know there's a huge round of footy. You got the Bulldogs are playing. Are they playing later today, or is they playing tomorrow? I'm kind of lost track of
later today. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Port Adelaide.
And
be a big game.
And and I wondered, and I guess it's probably good that you've got Collingwood and St. Kilda coming up as the last game of the round, because that's going to be one heck of a matchup. But it almost would have made sense to bookend Adelaide and Port Adelaide at the opposite ends of the whole round being played in Adelaide. But they didn't let me make that decision, so they forgot to consult me on that. But yeah,
it's been interesting to hear the commentary around like the home game stuff and everything around this, and most people are people are divided on whether the Bulldogs would get one up on Port Adelaide this weekend. But because of what they've seen with Adelaide doing so well, and because of the hype around the round, surely the momentum is with Port Adelaide this weekend.
Well, I did tip Port Adelaide to win, but not by much. But as I'd also mentioned, I tipped North Melbourne to beat Brisbane this weekend too. So I usually do one. I just have this sneaky feeling that North is going to get it done today. I don't know why. I just do.
Yeah.
I may be wrong, but that's okay. And
Yeah.
as I will say every once in a while, please do not take my advice on this because I don't have a clue what I'm talking about. Don't think, oh, you know what? I want to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and try to turn my mortgage payment into 3 mortgage payments with this bet. No, don't do that. Don't
No.
listen. Don't do don't do that because I'm I'm the wrong person to and first of all, don't do that anyway.
Yeah.
But it's just I talked to a number of people who do a lot of little bit of wagering here and there. I've never placed a bet on a game ever I've never been in a casino in my life, and I'm almost 60 years old. That's not something I've ever had the inkling or desire to do. I know some people enjoy that sort of thing, but I don't.
Yeah.
Not something I would necessarily want to do. So
Yeah, but like tipping, the one thing I love about footy is that tipping, especially at the start of the season, like you have really no clue what's going to happen. Like who would have thought that St Kilda, Carlton, North Melbourne would be in the top set of teams?
yeah,
Like and Geelong would be at the bottom.
right.
Like no one would have thought in their right mind to do that, and you would have been laughed at if you'd said any such thing. But now look at it.
Yeah,
Like that's what's good about the game is that there's a lot less predictability in it.
Yeah.
And it's what happens on ground at that time, and that's why it's so exciting to watch.
Well, I mean, last year, I'm a Cats supporter, but last year I tipped the Cats to finish 6th on the ladder. I didn't have them, making a prelim. I just did. I didn't think I thought I bought into the quote unquote too old, too slow thing, and I'm glad they proved me wrong.
Most people did.
Yeah,
most people did. So, yeah, it's incredible that's why the stories of when clubs win the ultimate prize is so amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what you live for. Hey.
Yep. Well, and especially for somebody that like me that has had seen one local championship in my lifetime, and it's not even a sport that I follow. So
yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
But Geelong had been doing so well anyway, like making finals every year.
Right.
Not so it's just they're great to watch, and they're my second team. And my dad follows the Geelong Cats, so they're an incredible team.
Well, I've got hanging up on the ceiling above me here. I've got the posters from 2007, 2009, and 2011 of the grand final posters from the Herald Sun hanging up on the ceiling above me here. So, and then the premiership one from 2011 with the cat with the flag there from the Herald Sun as well, right next to it, and a 2011 pennant and a Indigenous flag, and it's just, I mean, there's 18 empty jars of Vegemite up there too. So absolutely love it.
Amazing.
Absolutely love it.
I have a fun grand final story, I guess, if you want to
go for it. Yeah, go for it. We'll close out with that.
So like in 2021, we're coming out of very harsh living conditions with the lockdowns and stuff within Melbourne.
Some of the harshest on the planet. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a tough time. It really was. And there was an excitement around our local area about the Bulldogs making the final. And, people watching at home, making their own little parties with the people that they could gather with at the time. So that for me, it was with my wife. And, in the local area, everyone was abuzz with footy fever. There were murals being painted on blank walls of each of the footy players, like Bailey Smith. So what we did on the day of the grand final before it started was visit all of these landmarks on foot, because it's what we could do is, have our pictures taken with each of these landmarks, go to the Whitten Oval, have a picture there, go to each of the murals, and then we'd go to the supermarket to get some supplies, some beers, some chips and things like that to have during the game. And it was the most Footscray thing that you could ever imagine. We walked past the kind of like, it's a supermarket called Cheaper by Miles. So it's like a kind of a bargain supermarket where they have mostly expired goods and things like that. And Michelle found her favorite biscuits, and she bought a whole crate of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this photo of her with her crate of biscuits, which nothing to do with the footy at all, but she's like, oh, I'm going to get the biscuits, and me with my beers and my chips and things for the footy in my hand. And I was just like, wrong priorities, really.
Well, I have, please pass along to her that I admire her frugality, because
Yes.
I'm very cheap when it comes to that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, I just, that it's the package says it's the quote unquote sell by date. It's not the, oh no, your tongue is going to melt if you eat it after this date. I have, it's I mean, I have these bars. I actually have a couple of them sitting right next to me, that the best by date on these were 13th of December of 2022. I had one of them yesterday. Yeah. These things are normally, for a box of 16 of them, they're normally like $20 a box. I bought 8 boxes of them back in early December of last year. I bought 8 boxes of them for $16 total. So I bought like 120 of them for like $16. And they're, and I just, because I'm really watching what I've been eating, because I don't know if I'd mentioned this to you during the conversation, but I since August of 21, I'm down almost 62 kilograms. So I'm trying to disappear. So I'm getting closer.
No, I hope you don't. Yeah. But
yeah, I'm getting closer.
I'm sure that you're feeling a lot healthier for it. Yeah.
Oh, heck of a lot more healthy, because I've had to go out and I've had to go out and buy a whole new wall of sound dampening, because I've donated all of the old clothes that were now too big for me. I've just gotten rid of them out of the house, and fortunately, much of what I hung on to were things that I had somehow, all of those clothes shrunk previously, and now they all regained their size, so I can wear some of them again. Yeah. Well,
amazing.
Yeah, Tim, I'm going to let you go, sir. Here, I'm going to go get my dishwasher emptied and get settled in to watch Brisbane and North Melbourne. But my guest has been Tim Outhred, and Tim, I cannot thank you enough for coming on today. This is a great conversation. I loved hearing your story about your becoming a fan and your family's involvement with the club, and just I think we did the other discussion that we had. I think we did it justice. I think we treated that fairly. I think we handled it with the respect that it deserves, and I think we touched on that well. And I hope people will embrace that conversation as well, because it's I think it's an inevitability that somebody is eventually going to announce that, yes, that's me, or it's us, as the case may be. But it's not our place to say that. Yeah. But I appreciate you coming on today, man. Thanks so very much.
It's been fantastic, and it's been a pleasure to speak with you, because I think my interest in your podcast has been because maybe related to that story of me coming to AFL footy as a passionate supporter a little bit later than the majority, and it's nice to hear your very fresh perspective on the game, and your passion is very much felt over here, because you have to overcome a lot of logistical barriers, but also maybe cultural barriers about being an American watching AFL in America.
Yeah.
So power to you, and everything you say about what America could do with AFL. I agree with totally, and your guests that you've had on previously to talk about these issues, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, and
so thank you.
I thank you, and I'm working on getting that out to more NFL fans, and hopefully bring some more people into the fold too. So, but Tim, again, thanks so much, man. I do appreciate it. Cheers.
Cheers, and I hope to see you at the footy sometime soon.
God, I hope I'm there too, man. I really do. I am.
All right.
I'm hoping that I get there very, very soon.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Tim, I appreciate you taking time out of your morning to sit down and chat with me, sir. I really, really enjoyed that. We hit on some key topics there. I think that your journey to becoming a Bulldog supporter and your wife's journey to becoming a Bulldog supporter is admirable, and absolutely love what she's doing for the organization. And you're doing a hero's work as well with the profession that is your calling as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, just a reminder, everything about the podcast can be found over at my website, yankonthefooty.com. As I mentioned earlier, you can get on the mailing list. You can leave a review. Remember, when you get on the mailing list, new episodes will be in your inbox just a few minutes after that episode is released. If you want to help out the podcast, to help keep the lights on, so to speak, you can click on the Buy Me a Coffee button. There's a little yellow circle in the bottom left-hand corner and a white rectangle that says Buy Me a Coffee on the right-hand side there as well. And you could also search out the podcast over on Buy Me a Coffee that way if you wanted to go that route. If you got the idea for a guest for the podcast and maybe you have a unique story, because I love being able to tell stories around the game. I love being able to learn why people love the aspects of the game that they love, the clubs that they love, how their local footy clubs run. Just getting into the nuts and bolts of footy, because it's, I think, as I've said many times, the greatest game on the planet, and I love learning about every facet of it. So feel free to drop me a note and let me know. Okay, or fill out the register as a guest page over on my website at yankonthefooty.com. Now, ladies and gentlemen, look out for one another. Check up on your friends, make sure they're okay. Give them a call. If you need to talk to somebody, please reach out to talk to somebody. If you have something that you're dealing with, don't try to deal with it on your own. Get in touch with somebody that can help, whether it's a friend or somebody who's a trained professional to help with whatever the issue might be. We want you here. We need you here. The world appreciates you being here, so don't hesitate to reach out. And ladies and gentlemen, I do appreciate the kind words. I really, really enjoy reading the comments from many of you on social media. And again, if you'd like to leave a review, it would be a huge help to the show. That'd be awesome. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, may your dribble kick never hit the post. I will catch you later. This has been episode 257 of A Yank on the Footy. Again, you can reach me at Yank_ on Twitter, or at A Yank on the Footy podcast on Facebook, A Yank on the Footy on Instagram, or search out my name, Craig Wessels, on either LinkedIn or Facebook as well. You can reach me by email at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com, and you can find everything again at the website, ayankonthefooty.com. I do hope you'll share the episode with your friends and family, folks. Word of mouth is a huge help to get the podcast into the ears of other people. It's a big, big pond out there, and I'm trying to find my own little corner of it there to get some, get people tuning in. And those of you who do listen on a regular basis, and there are many, many of you, I truly appreciate it. I thank you for the support and the encouragement that you give me doing this. I really, really enjoy that. But I do want to also mention here publicly before I go, I want to thank Peter Lausch for sharing with me not only a polo, but also a singlet, a jumper from the Waratah Warriors from the Northern Territories. I did wear the polo shirt to school. I teach school the other day. I thought it was going to be too small on me, and it may have been a little tight, but since I've lost as much weight as I have, it did fit. But it's going to fit very much better here very, very soon. That sounded really ridiculous. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. I do appreciate you listening. Share it with your friends and family, and until next time, goodbye.